All right, today we are diving deep. We're going to pull back the curtain on your wallet and expose these powerful, pretty much invisible forces that are shaping every single dollar you spend. So let's just jump right in with a question. What on earth could Wall Street, with all its forecasts and big numbers, possibly have in common with your personal bank account? Well, it turns out a whole lot more than you probably think. And that connection? That's exactly what we're going to unpack right now. Okay, so to really get a handle on our own spending habits, we first have to kind of look up. We need to check the big overarching economic weather forecast. We've got to understand the climate that we're all living and spending in. And what's the headline for that forecast? Well, according to Morgan Stanley's outlook for the US economy, the big number to know is 1.8%. That's the projected growth for real GDP. Now, what does that actually mean for you and me? Well, in simple terms, it means the economy is expected to keep chugging along, but it's not exactly a rocket ship. Think of it more like a steady cruising speed, not full throttle acceleration. It's fine. But here's where it gets really interesting. That one single number, 1.8%, it doesn't even begin to tell the whole story. See, it's an average, and averages can be super deceiving. Let's peel back the layers and see how that growth is actually being spread around. And wow, this really paints a picture of what economists are calling a K-shaped economy. Just look at this. The top 20% of earners, they hold a staggering 71% of all household net worth. Meanwhile, the bottom 20% hold just 3%. The gap is just massive. And here's the real kicker. It's how that wealth is held. For the top 20%, a huge chunk of it is in things like stocks and mutual funds, assets that actually grow when the market does well. Now, compare that to the bottom 20%. Their single biggest asset, consumer durables. We're talking cars, appliances, things that almost always lose value over time, not gain. So what you end up with is the split reality. The economic experience is literally splitting in two. For people with investments, it can feel like a boom, but for so many others, it's just a constant struggle. And this creates this intense social pressure, amplified by everything we see online, to keep up with a lifestyle that feels more and more out of reach. That pressure, that feeling of needing to keep up, it leads us right into a psychological trap that, let's be honest, you've probably felt yourself. It's called lifestyle creep. So what is it really? Well, the definition is simple, but it is so powerful. It's when your spending just kind of naturally inflates right along with your income. That fancy coffee you get every day, the extra streaming service you just had to have, the slightly nicer car, they all slowly, quietly, shift from being wants to feeling like absolute needs. And that's exactly what makes it so dangerous. It's insidious. It's like a silent inflation that just eats away at any raise or bonus you get, leaving you feeling like you're just treading water, even when your paycheck is getting bigger. So how can you tell if you're caught in this trap? Well, some of the big warning signs are things like finding it almost impossible to save money, watching your debt tick upwards, or just feeling this constant pressure to project a certain image. If any of that is ringing a bell, trust me, you are not alone. Okay, so we've got this big economic pressure from the outside and then this sneaky psychological tendency on the inside. But what's the final piece of the puzzle? What makes this trap so ridiculously easy to fall into today? Well, for that, we have to zoom right into the moment you actually buy something. Let me just ask you this, straight up. Do you feel like you spend more when you just tap your phone or your card compared to when you actually have to count out cold, hard cash? Well, if you said yes, guess what? The research 100% backs you up. One fascinating study found that the way we pay fundamentally changes our behavior. Paying with physical cash is psychologically more painful, right? And that pain makes us hesitate. But with mobile payments, that pain basically vanishes, and our willingness to spend just shoots right up. This all comes down to a core idea in psychology called the pain of paying. It's that real physical, emotional sting we feel when we hand over our money. But digital payments, with their seamless, frictionless, tap-and-go magic, they pretty much eliminate that feeling entirely. It just makes it so much easier to spend without a second thought. And hey, speaking of big economic forces where the headline numbers can be a little misleading, let's take a quick look at another one you hear about constantly, the AI boom. It's actually a perfect example of why you always have to look past the flashy announcement. Here's the key thing to remember. Those huge, multi-billion-dollar spending announcements for AI you're always reading about, they don't always translate dollar for dollar into direct economic growth for the country. It's a little more complicated than that. Just take a look at this breakdown from Morgan Stanley. So in 2026, the gross AI spending is expected to add about 0.39 percentage points to GDP growth. Looks pretty good, right? But, and this is the important part, once you subtract all the money spent on imports, because a lot of that high-tech hardware is made overseas, the actual net effect on the economy gets cut almost in half. It's another classic case of the real story hiding in the details. Okay, so let's bring this all back home. We've looked at the economy, we've looked at our own psychology, and we've looked at the tech that's literally in our hands. Now let's see how all these different weather fronts combine to create your wallet's very own perfect storm. Really, it all boils down to these three powerful forces working together. First, you've got the K-shaped economy creating that intense social pressure to keep up. Second, you have our own natural wiring for lifestyle creep, making us want to spend more as we earn more. And third, you have this incredibly frictionless technology, like tap to pay, that basically removes the brakes on our spending. And when these three forces, the economic, the psychological, and the technological, all converge, they create this powerful, invisible wind at your back, pushing you to spend more every single day, whether you even realize it or not. So we've pulled back the curtain, we've looked at the hidden architecture that's influencing your financial life. The final question we want to leave you with is pretty simple. Now that you can see these invisible forces at play, what, if anything, are you going to do differently?